There we go. Oh wow! I was just about to say, like, it's just us, Thomas, because I was like, we haven't got any commenters, but it's because I was looking at the private chat, so it's just you and me. No one said anything. Now I'm here. There's loads of you.
It's all kicking off.
So hello to you guys. Hello. Welcome back to the Shallow Proclamation. My name is Paul, and I'm joined by
Thomas.
Great to see you guys.
Can I apologise for last night? Well,
go ahead.
I feel like we both messed up a little bit.
I was going to apologise. As well. So let me tell you the story, good people. We apologise deeply for those of you who turned up last night. As you would, given that it was scheduled for last night. On Wednesday night, Thomas said, no, I just thought to myself, I was like, hang on a second, I'm going to see Dave Gorman tomorrow night. And I was like, that's not going to work, is it? Like, so I messaged Thomas and I said, I've just remembered I'm actually out and I can't come to the, I can't be at the live thing. It's not going to work. And so we said, okay, we'll move it. So sorry about that, the fact that it was going to be changed.
So that was Paul's side of the failure. And then in my head, I was like, okay, yeah, we'll change the date. And I forgot to actually reschedule the YouTube. So I'm very sorry about that. Thankfully, I just happened to be on a few minutes past the time it started, and Bobby Dazzler alerted my attention to it, so thank you, Bobby. And I jumped in the chat and said, sorry guys, but I had a read, and you guys were on there, and we're already posting puns on the Hartnell era. So many jokes in there, like I'm about to head off to the security kitchen and stuff. So I was proud of you guys. I was like, you guys could run this channel, basically.
Yeah, I think I got a message from Thomas during the interval of Dave Gorman, and that's when he said, "Oh man, I've just forgotten to reschedule it," and I was like, "Oh no." But hello, anyways, you guys. So apologies to those of you who did come. Great to see some of the names we recognise on here: Bobby Dazzler, Ponjo123, Gutteridge, Kevin Merchant, Chem Dog, Paul Hunter. Lots of names I recognise here. Alex Phillips. Alex Phillips, you are a prolific question asker. Alex, you have provided the majority of the questions for tonight, actually, which is good. Stuart Who, lots of names here. Apologies if I miss you. It's not because we don't appreciate you, but there's just a lot of names suddenly appearing. Gordon W. Yes, lots of good stuff here. You're right, John G. Dave Gorman is certainly not as entertaining as you guys. How could he be? Great. So, guys, we didn't want to... I know when we do our season reviews, they can end up... They're probably longer than we ever expect them to be. We kind of don't want this to be quite as long-winded as some of those have been. But what we've done is... Or what Thomas has done, I should say. Thomas has thrown together sort of greatest hits of the Hartnell era from things we've watched. So clips. Now, I've not seen this, so we will post this up tomorrow, I think, as a separate video, sort of our highlights from the Hartnell years. But we thought what we do is we kind of watch that now, and that will hopefully jog our memories as well to some bits, because we realised was it our first video was the 29th of May last year, Thomas, or our first actual episode that we watched?
I think that was when we released the first episode. So An Unearthly Child Part 1.
Okay. Yeah. So it's been over a year. We were just saying it feels like it's taking a long time to get through Hartnell, but given that we have already finished season 4. We've recently finished that. That feels like it's moved a lot more quickly. So the Hartnell era is obviously there's a lot more kind of, well, it just feels quite lengthy. I'm not sure technically. Well, I think there is more Hartnell than anything else, give or take. Maybe Tom Baker, in terms of pure hours. I don't know, but yes. So we're going to have a little watch of this. We hope you'll watch it with us and enjoy it, and it may spur questions from yourselves and things. We've got questions to answer that people have thrown in, but chuck stuff in the comments as we go. We'll try and deal with as much as we can, and we are going to use it to jog our memory a bit as we think about the era.
All right, are you ready?
I'm ready. Oh, headphone warning. Thomas played this to me a moment ago, just the beginning of it, and it was quite a bit louder, so if you've got headphones on, you might just want to brace yourself.
Okay. Yeah,
not crazy loud, but...
concerned about the ears of the people. Thanks, Paul.
No worries.
All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1.
Dr. Oho. There we go.
Yeah, what is that O?
Ian!
Ooh.
What on earth do you think you're doing?
Like, he is a bit of a Class A scumbag, isn't he? Like, did he know it would electrocute him?
Did they not just first stone at him?
That's horrendous.
So did the doctor just instigate... I think the doctor has just instigated a stoning.
That's the first thing we see is the plunger.
One moment you're abusing us, and the next you're playing the perfect to help us relax.
One moment you're abusing us, the next you're playing the perfect butler.
Estimated that young lady in the past. Shot out.
Shot out? That's not even close to Chesterton.
I'm going to play the After 8 game.
That lady must have taken it off the Doctor and Ian and Susan before they woke up. So they had it on the whole night, whereas Barbara had it off for most of the night. So she's...
It's a family show, Thomas. It's a family show. Dear me.
Yeah.
Ah, that shot. That's the shot that's used in
What?
You're not allowed in here.
The Name of the Doctor. When Clara sees the Doctor go into the TARDIS, you know, he turns back.
You have declared your love for me, and I acknowledge and accept your gentle
crumbs.
Doctor's chin looks a bit weird there.
Yeah, looked a bit like Jabba the Hutt. Oh, God, you bottle. We're not comparing William Hartnell to Jabba the Hutt. We're saying that an animated depiction of William Hartnell for one shot vaguely resembled Jabba the Hutt. Wow.
There you go.
Very much setting up a second season, isn't it?
Have I got a second series? Right, here we go, season 2.
Nice.
This guy's got some personal space issues.
We shall be as quick as we can. And you bathe that ankle. What you need is a jolly good smack bottom.
Doctor has quite a disgruntled look on his face there.
Oh, come on. I was flipping looking at him.
You got really triggered by that.
One day, I shall come back. Yes, I shall come back.
I actually found that very poignant, that final scene. Do you see that there, the Doctor saying that he's not actually a doctor. He doesn't have a PhD. So instead, the title of the show has to become MPhil Who.
Oh. Okay.
I love it. I love it. Only in Doctor Who. Well, I don't know about you, Paul, but I think that was pretty spectacular.
It was quite something. I mean, I don't really know what's going on, if I'm honest. It's hard to know what to say about that.
Doctor, we've got our clothes on. Well, I should hope so.
Not like normal. Normally in the TARDIS we're naked.
I call them all. I am the master.
It's hard to explain quite why that happens. Kind of big finish for season 2.
Oh, look at that.
So,
okay, hold the phone. Wow. Join us on this journey through the entirety of Doctor Who.
And more.
And more. We're also watching Sex in the City franchise.
Tomorrow is the last day this planet will ever see.
Okay, there we go. That's a cliffhanger.
Now will you shut up?
Yes, Hartnell. Oh, that's quite scary.
Yeah, he's quite freaky looking, isn't he?
Where is that genuine terranium?
Over here.
It's a pity I blacked out. I mean, if I knew the ratio readings, we could use the same force against projectors.
Where is that most important thing again? Oh, we just left it lying around. Imagine if you were a child, super excited to That is gold.
This is quite disturbing, actually. Oh no.
West. And oh God. Oh God. None of them could understand. Not even my little Susan.
Go from move 1023.
Master switch!
When there's blood upon the sawdust in the last chance
saloon. Dodo's quite good, isn't she?
My dear Dodo, you know, you're fast becoming a prey to every cliche-ridden convention in the American West.
Not looking good for him.
Looks like he's got a bit of a table leg. And one of those high table cafe tables just
From Grand Designs.
yeah, just sitting on top of him.
Must have been fun to film.
Oh, bit more footage. Oh, that's it, Dodo.
I'm the Doctor. I'm a Time Lord.
Exactly.
She says she's feeling much better and she'd like to stay here in London and she sent you her love.
Oh. No way. Oh, is that a Cyberman?
Yep, so here we are. It's our first introduction to the Cybermen.
Wow. Who's that? There we go.
Oh, there we go. Mate, that's really good. Well done. That is brilliant.
Oh, thanks.
Watching that, I was like, oh, this is a good YouTube channel. I'd watch that.
Now, a few people in the chat have been trying to guess which snack I'll have tonight. Did anyone say a banana?
I don't think anyone guessed, did they?
No, I've actually had 2 of these today already, so ODing on potassium a bit here. But anyway, yeah, Paul, were there any, so that's almost a year's worth of shallow proclamationing. Was there anything that struck you in watching that? Just about...
Well, it was good to see, I mean, because it's been a year and you there's a week or so between everything we do, because we tend to only get on here once a week and do things. You kind of forget, how much you've done. And I kind of forgot how much we laughed as well. And not in a bad way, because we're enjoying it. We're having a good time and we're not taking the mick out of it, at all. There are some genuinely funny moments in there from the series that we've enjoyed. So, watching that, I think someone said, how's it feel watching a year's worth of work play out? I'm like, oh yeah, it feels good. I'm really pleased with what we've achieved and actually all we've done. And actually, I think that's a really nice... reminder. Well, it's just really helpful to see some of those things right from the beginning through to bits that obviously we saw not hugely long ago, because it does, you realise how much the Hartnell era sort of changes over time. It covers a lot of ground, a lot of territory. What were your thoughts sort of going back through those things? Because you inevitably had to wade through far more stuff than that.
Oh man, yeah. So I just love it. How evil Paul's laugh.
So
I think my favourite moment is in the Web Planet where we finished. I think it was the second or third part of the Web Planet where I say to you, kind of as a joke, "Wow, that was absolutely spectacular," and your laugh is so drawn out.
It's like a very long wheeze, isn't it?
It's like opening a Coke can really slowly. You warm up to it. It's over such a long period.
And
I've used that clip in other videos, like at work and stuff, as a meme.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
I'd forgotten as well the bit that line you'd said about Barbara, which in the Romans was it? About her having it off all
Keys
night.
of Marinus, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, it was. Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, brilliant. And I'm gutted, Thomas. You didn't include you trying to remember Dodo's name.
Oh,
Are you trying to bury that clip? You trying to bury that?
There are some things that I am genuinely ashamed of, even on this channel.
On this channel. Well, no, I mean, so I think for me, reflecting on the Hartnell era, well, what struck me, I mean, maybe just from the video first, some bits because I noted down some bits as we went. John G, that's something I definitely want to talk about, it being the most diverse. Well, let's deal with that first thing, because you've just brought it up. I think the Hartnell era, as you think back about everything we've just seen then, even in just that clip, which, the clips there, which are kind of obviously selective, it is probably the bravest, it might be the bravest kind of era of Doctor Who, in the sense that they just were like, let's try this, because we've been saying about the Troughton era, obviously we're not hugely far in, but it ends up in this sort of base under siege pattern that pops up quite a lot, whereas the Hartnell era is so varied the whole time, and that you can have something like you think how struck we were at the end of Dalek Master Plan by how darkly it ended, so grim, and then you compare that to having something like the Romans, which is basically a farce, like a joke, not a complete farce. It is just played completely for laughs, and then even then you've got things like the gunfighters. Whilst neither of us particularly enjoyed that, the fact that you could just do it, you could have a go, and Bobby Dazzler, he says they ignored the budget and flew with their imaginations, and they were working with limited money, limited technology, compared to what we could do now, and they were trying to do all kinds of amazing things. And people knock it sometimes, don't they? People watch some of the old stuff and they go, "Oh, look, he looks awful, this bit here and stuff." But when you try and see it in the context of the time, I mean, I don't know whether this is true, but I've often heard it repeated. Doctor Who as a TV show was often at the forefront of what TV was doing in terms of effects and stuff. Like obviously in the cinema, if you had a bigger budget, you could do lots more. But in terms of kind of small screen, small budget British TV, it was often pushing the boundaries, and I think you get that both in the sense of what they were doing, like the visual effects, but the scope of the series, that they thought, let's have a crack at everything, historicals, crazy space things, serious stuff, really poignant stuff, like you said about Susan leaving. You mentioned on there, you said I found that quite poignant. I remember we sat watching Susan leave in sort of basically silence for about 4 minutes of the episode, and then, at the end, we kind of sat there quite silently for a moment as well, because I think we felt it was quite, moved by that. So, any reflect, I don't know, respond to that or...
Yeah, and I think that came across something that's worth talking about in this Hartnell review is an adventure in space and time, because that's really a film about William Hartnell, isn't it? And we were very moved by that, and doing this Shallow Proclamation channel was actually the first time I saw that film, which is an absolute gem. But just watching that struck me, how they went from an unearthly child to the Daleks to just so many risks right from the beginning. I think you're absolutely right about how diverse it is. And it's interesting. I mean, from what I gather, it's quite an accurate portrayal in that film of the fact that they did that pilot. And the problem with it was, and this is something we can probably touch on, was that one of the main problems with it was that the Doctor was too unlikable, and they were like, "Oh, we need to go back to this and refilm it and make him a more kind of likable, warm character." And I think that was a good choice. I wonder if the show would have endured if the Doctor had been a bit of a nasty
Class A scumbag. I wrote that down. Watching that again,
Well, of course, it still makes it in, doesn't it? In An Earthly Child, he's still a bit of a mysterious and quite electrocuting in and stuff. He's a hard character to pin down. He's a bit prickly, but over the course of that series, he does get warmer, doesn't he? And then by the end of his time, he's a pretty likable character, I'd say.
Very much so. And I think, I mean, obviously you've just started Troughton, but you've not seen any of the other classic Doctors through, or sort of McGann between them, and then obviously you've seen new ones. But I would say, as I've reflected on it, having now seen that whole Hartnell era, I think out of all the Doctors, he probably gets the most character development. The only other Doctor I would say maybe gets similar or more would be Capaldi's Doctor. I think Capaldi's Doctor goes on a really good journey through the sort of 3 seasons. Whereas some of the other Doctors see, like Tennant is kind of Tennant all the way through, that's what he's like. I mean, I'm not knocking that. I like Tennant, I like Smith. But Hartnell starts off, as you say, quite prickly. He's a bit grumpy, and you're like, Ian feels like he's the hero of the show. And we kept saying in the early days, didn't we? And it was notable that we said it in the early days. We were saying, "Oh, he's being a bit doctory now." Yeah. Now, and we don't say that as much anymore because now he's the Doctor. The Doctor does those things. That's what you expect of the character. But he really goes on a journey, doesn't he, from this sort of prickly kind of character you're not sure of, like you say. And he warms, and there's always these little glimmers of stuff, and lots of humour in there as well, which I think a bit. We don't want to talk too much about this because we've mentioned it before, and we'll get there when we come to Capaldi and the one with the First Doctor in it. But he is, I think, in some areas, the First Doctor has unfairly been sort of seen as just a grumpy old man. And a bit sort of backwards, but I think when you watch it, he's very kind of sprightly and jovial, and he's got a lot of warmth and affection, both for like Susan and Vicky in particular. I think you see that really come through. I mean, we kind of felt like Vicky was more like a granddaughter than Susan was, and
then Dodo much less so. But
yeah.
It's interesting, John G saying, interesting Capaldi was a similar age to Hartnell. And that's probably the main stereotype of Hartnell's Doctor, isn't it? That he's old. And he wasn't actually that old when he played the part. Although, of course, in the way they portray him, he is a grandfather figure, isn't he? So they're clearly trying, from the outset, they establish him as, okay, he's a senior figure. They could have cast a very young man bouncing around the TARDIS from an early part of the show, but it's interesting, I think, that for the First Doctor they chose, actually, we want someone who's wise, who probably, I think in that time, maybe the more senior citizens were probably more respected in society. I think they should be today, but I just think that's interesting that he was, they chose for the First Doctor to be a grandfather figure rather than a young man, sort of 30-year-old or something.
And that's something that came out when Capaldi. Interesting, we are sort of comparing him a lot to Capaldi now. When Capaldi became the Doctor, there were people who sort of complained, and said, "Oh, he's not young and attractive." You wouldn't. You can't imagine a show today basing themselves around a sort of older character like that so much, or it would be far more of a risk than perhaps it was then. Alex Phillips he asked beforehand, but he's also asked on here about whether we see any of the Doctor's characteristics, Hartnell's characteristics, in later Doctors. I think
you're the one to comment on that, Paul.
Well, I mean, yeah, I was going to say we can't really go too much into that so much. I mean, again, I was thinking about this earlier because I've seen the question that Alex had sent in. One of the really noticeable thing about Capaldi was even when he was announced in the role. Some people will have seen this. I don't know if you watched this when he was announced, Thomas. That show they did, and Zoe Ball says the new Doctor is Peter Capaldi, and Peter Capaldi comes out and he's holding himself like this, and
Yes,
he does,
I've seen that clip,
and he does
yeah.
that, and he does that little finger thing like that. Now, obviously, he doesn't take that into the show, that kind of thing, but he's very much channeling Hartnell there, and so I wonder, and it's interesting that we saw there's a similarity in terms of he's slightly older, he's slightly grumpier, but he mellows. So I guess there's that. I mean, I think what I'd say about Hartnell as well, at least for a good chunk of it, he's very... Despite the fact at the beginning you don't know whether he's supposed to be just a human from the future or whatever, he is quite alien in some ways. So he's not like some of the later Doctors who are very much pally with human beings and, it's all about humanity and love humanity. Sometimes he was quite short with people and, said it's not my problem and stuff. And he has a slightly more alien quality, which you get a bit in the Tom Baker era as well. But again, you get that in Capaldi. You think about Kill the Moon, where he's just like, "This is your problem. See ya."
Yeah, there's a callousness there, isn't there? Yeah.
So yeah.
The one that fascinated me was at the end of the Romans, because as you said, the Romans is a kind of, it's an out and out comedy. And it owns that, and it's we weren't laughing at it for the wrong reasons. Like, it was genuinely good gags. Like the scene where he's playing that instrument, he doesn't know how to play it, so he just pretends to play it so quietly that everyone's pretending to hear it, but he's not actually playing anything. But that has an interesting ending, doesn't it? Because it's kind of implied that they start the fire of Rome. Don't they kind of? Yeah, I can't quite remember how it comes about, but they're there when Nero's holding the thing that's on fire, and they're kind of part of it. And the Doctor kind of denies it. He's like, "Oh no, that wasn't me." And I just thought that was quite interesting. It's kind of like there's a stubbornness to him, and it's very, very hard for him to admit that he's done something wrong. I think later on, maybe we do start to see that when the companions start to leave. And I think a brilliant moment where those clash, his stubbornness and the kind of companions wanting to return to Earth, is Ian and Barbara. Because you see how torn up he is about that. It's the end of the chase, isn't it? And they just kind of go. That's very well done.
But that was you saying about getting them back home again. That sort of reminded me of something that we've sort of... It still gets mentioned throughout the series, but maybe has dropped off a little bit now. At the beginning, how he's got no control over where they go, which gives it a different edge as well. The show, he's not the character perhaps we know today who does what he likes. It's very much at the mercy of where the TARDIS takes him and them, which again is a nice decision. I don't know, because again, in my head I kind of know these things, so I've seen it before. So when you're you're obviously seeing it all fresh. So what were the things for you that you would say? What were the things that made you go, "Oh yeah, this is Doctor Who," and what were the things that made you kind of go, "Oh, this isn't what I was expecting"?
That's an interesting point. I suppose because even in the modern era, they've played with the TARDIS being unpredictable and stuff, haven't they? But I suppose I didn't know that was going to be a thing. That he basically just had no idea what's going to happen each time he pulls the lever. He kind of sees where the wind takes him. So the cluelessness around the TARDIS surprised me. I was surprised that Gallifrey and the Time War and stuff. I mean, this is embarrassing and shows my lack of knowledge of the classic era. But I'm surprised that wasn't there from early on. I remember we still haven't encountered that, have we? In Troughton, we the word of sort of Time Lords or Gallifrey, none of that has been mentioned so far, has it?
No, and I remember you saying very early on you were surprised that he didn't know the Daleks because you thought the Time War had happened before the series begun. So
Now that is embarrassing, isn't it?
well, there's no reason you would know particularly. So
Well, yeah, because I'm trying to think, how did I interpret the 50th anniversary thing? I think in my head, I feel like a total idiot now, but in my head, when Tennant in Gridlock and stuff is telling Martha about the Time War, and he's talking about it being this traumatic time, in my head, okay, that's something that happened right in the early days of Doctor Who that they're referencing. And so to me, the 50th anniversary was like, okay, they're going back again to fight in the Time War or something like that. So yeah, that was a surprise to me, that these things that in my head are kind of all part of the canon of the show, and they are now, but they don't go back that far. So it's like, what is the essence of the Doctor that goes back right to the beginning? And there's no sonic screwdriver. Basically, there's this figure who definitely isn't from Earth. You could get that from early on, traveling around in a police box with companions. That's kind of the essence of Doctor Who, isn't it? As long as you've got that, you've got Doctor Who. Now, there are things that have been added to that if the modern era then started to deny, people get angry, as we saw with some recent offerings. But I just find that interesting, how simple and bare bones the essence of the Doctor is. I wasn't expecting that.
And
it leaves the mystery, doesn't it? You don't really know who he is.
Yeah, well, exactly, and the clue's in the title, isn't it? Doctor Who, like, who's this guy? Who is he? And the show is at its best when it keeps that element of mystery. I was going to say something that's completely disappeared from my head all of a sudden. I was going to say the thing was you saying about it being quite simple. And the difficult thing is that, of course, when we're watching it back, we're not watching it in the same way that people watched it in 1963, because we are reading it through the lens of almost 60 years of Doctor Who. So, even when we're sitting watching, like, the first story, and you're saying things like, oh, well, he's a Time Lord, or, Gallifrey, Time War, these things. Those are all things that we're kind of reading back into it, in ways, we're trying to make sense of things that perhaps, because in a sense they were kind of making things up as they went along. But Doctor Who fans are an interesting bunch that we try, well, I try at least. I want it to work. I want it all to fit together. So,
right. Yeah.
So we're always reading itself in a different way. We kind of see it in a slightly different way than perhaps people who did have that an even simpler view of it than we have. You say it was simple at the beginning and uncluttered and uncomplicated, but probably we still see it with more complexity than it was seen at the time.
That's really interesting. Yeah, we've got a lot of baggage that we bring to it.
Yeah. Do you want to look at some of these questions?
Yeah, let's have a look. So these are ones that people have sent in. We've been advertising this review for a bit of a while, haven't we? So you've accumulated a nice stash.
Yeah. I should say though as well, because we're in terms of episodes coming out on the channel, we're nearing the end of the Faceless ones, and then we've got Evil of the Daleks. And it was literally in the last episode of Evil of the Daleks, I went, "Bye everyone. Oh, and send us questions for the season 4 review," because I just forgotten to mention it for the whole time. So this is a good opportunity to tell you, send questions for the season 4 review. But yes, some people have been sending in comments. Alex Phillips, the classic ones are, do you have a favourite story from the Hartnell era? And now I can't remember. Now at the end of each season, we've said what our favourite story was from each season. I can't honestly remember what I said at that point. So I may well, I can remember one. So it's possible I may well contradict myself.
Yeah. Well, opinions shift, don't they?
Yeah, and I guess so. And it's different things for different times as well.
Different strokes for different folks. Yeah.
Different drinks.
Yeah, so go on, Paul. What's your favourite Hartnell story? Just like if you were to look at the suite of them now,
Gosh.
what would you go for?
I mean, for me, it comes down to not so much what do I think is the best in terms of it's the best story or the best production, best script or anything. It's when I kind of think to myself, if someone said, right, you got to sit down and watch Hartnell now, what are you going to watch? And I probably would say, I'm going to watch The Chase.
I'm so glad you said that, because that's what I'm leaning towards as well. And I think that's a reflection of our personalities, because I mean, I can admire so much about something like the Time Meddler. You know, I can see that's a masterful story, and the massacre as well.
Brilliant.
You know, his beautiful speech at the end. So, like, in terms of, you know, pathos and the Doctor showing, you know, depth and emotion, I would go to those. But I think in terms of just what I'd happily watch again with some poppadoms, it would be The Chase, wouldn't it? It's just fun.
It's comfort Doctor Who. Is. Like you'd have a lasagna or a curry, and this is fabulous shonky fun is a brilliant description of what it is. And if you know what it is, if you don't take it too seriously, and it doesn't take itself too seriously, I'm not saying there are definitely better stories, and there is better acting, and there are beautiful moments of Hartnell, like people saying, you know, when people saying his best moment is when he's there saying they've all gone, or the bit with saying goodbye to Susan, and lots of moments where you just think, oh wow, that was amazing. Or, you know, the end of the Dalek Master Plan. Maybe the Dalek Master Plan is this bloated thing, I don't know, but the ending was just the Feast of Stephen. But then, you know, it's hard. I say The Chase, but I loved so many other stories, and I guess, yeah. I mean, you can only pick one. So
Alex has said mine the gunfighter. No, it isn't. Sorry. No, I feel bad. Maybe it is his favourite. It's the same thing, though, isn't it? Exactly. Like, a lot of people think The Chase is terrible. I mean, I'm looking at this Radio Times thing. They gave it a couple of stars, I think.
So 2 out of 5 stars, did you say?
Yeah.
It's a 5-star review.
5 stars. They gave the gunfighters 1 star. But yeah.
So the worse reviewed it is, the more we probably enjoy it. So, although we didn't enjoy the gunfighters, did we? But
no, we didn't enjoy the gunfighters. But again, like, I'm not going to ridicule. I know I was joking about that there, but no, I'm not going to ridicule you, Alex Phillips, for if that is genuinely your favourite. Because again, even in that, like, there were things that we were quite impressed by, like that shootout at the end. I think you said at the time, it's not John Wick, but it had something.
How funny!
Didn't it?
Yeah, no, I remember that. Yes.
And the design, like, it was a convincing Western set, wasn't it? It was like Back to the Future 3 or something.
Yes, it was very like that. So would you pick the same one then, that you'll go for The Chase?
I think I'd go for The Chase, either that, or I'm still a massive fan of The Edge of Destruction. Just because
that's great.
It was a 2-parter, wasn't it?
Yes.
And it was just very concise, very innovative, because it was all in the TARDIS. And I was like, to have an episode that kind of did that so early on, I'd expect the modern era to do something like that, you know, just play around. And it has, hasn't it? It's had whole episodes in the TARDIS, sort of playing around with that. But the fact they did that early on, I think that was risky, and I think it paid off. Oh, the 10th Planet is probably my least favourite. Love the Cybermen and the regeneration, but the rest of it is dull. Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it just goes to show, doesn't it, like how everyone that's the great thing about the Hartnell era, isn't it? They tried so many different things that there's kind of something in there for everyone. And you might not love The Chase, but you might love the Massacre. Or you might not love the Massacre, but you love the Romans or something. You know, there's so much in there that there is something for everyone, I think. And what I loved as well was the sort of I think for me, if I had sort of an undiscovered gem, I think we kind of said the Savages was a really good one. Don't know if you remember kind of that.
Yes.
It was all missing, and a lot of people kind of said in the comments, this is a story that's slightly been overlooked. A lot of people said, I've never really quite got round to this one. And that was there was a lot of good stuff in there. So I liked those surprises through the Hartnell era, how things that I thought might be did. So
Yeah, absolutely.
Alex, and this is actually a question he sent in, and it's here. Alex Phillips asked about who our favourite fam of the Hartnell era was. So obviously they had a lot of different combinations of companions, particularly near the end, where they were coming and going at quite a rate sometimes. Any thoughts?
I think I'm going to say Ian, Barbara, and Vicky. Dream trio, right?
I can't disagree. I was going to go for exactly the same. When Vicky was, we said before, and she was the surprise MVP of the of the whole thing. Suddenly appeared, and you're like, she's brilliant, she's amazing, she's just a great character. But I think, because I almost said like the original three was Susan, but I don't think Susan ever got developed enough. And we talked about that at the end of when she left at the beginning of season 2. That she started well, but was turned into a bit of a damsel in distress, whereas Vicky was a bit more through it. Less said about Dodo, the better. Or Katerina.
I think a lot of them were underserved. I think Vicky, she's a great actress, isn't she? Maureen O'Brien, isn't it? Very charismatic. But it is largely about the writing as well, and even Vicky, like her exit wasn't especially well handled, was it?
That's true. I think that's one of the things that like when Susan leaves, you get a great ending, and when Ian and Barbara leave, am I right in thinking they went into you don't get to see what they say to the Doctor? They went inside the Dalek thing and with the Doctor and.
Yes, I think you're right.
So there were things there what we kind of said when we watched it. Oh, it's a shame we didn't see more of that. But you kind of get the Ian and Barbara happy ending, or you can at least write the happy ending in your head with the photos at the end where Ian's on the bus going like, or out Piccadilly Circus or Trafalgar Square or wherever they are.
That was fun, wasn't it?
And I think what you got with those first companions, they were really fleshed out as characters. Like, I loved Barbara and Ian, and I really loved Vicky. And I think after that, although there's characters I like, so I like most of them. I wasn't, particularly bothered by Dodo, I suppose, but everyone has their moments. They never, when they leave, there wasn't the same kind of, I'm really sad to see them go. Like I was sad to lose Ian and Barbara, and I was sad to lose Vicky. And I think, one of the questions someone asked was, is there anything you would have done differently if you'd been producer of the series? That was from Paul Hunter, actually, who's on here. And I think my main thing, I don't know anything about telly and making telly, so, but I think what was really noticeable in that final Hartnell season, season 3, we were constantly reading from like bits of info I'd found about how so-and-so didn't get on with so-and-so, this producer came in and then they just told this person, sorry, you're out now, Ben and Polly, we're going to write you out pretty quick. That was the next season, wasn't it? But they were kind of brought in, Dodo's dropped without much of a word, Vicky's dropped without much of a word to her, not much warning. I think if I was producer of the series, I would have said, like, that's just not how you treat people generally in the real world, but also... Let's keep having companions who are more like Ian and Barbara, in the sense that we flesh them out and have characters, not just who are we dragging in this week to just come along, do some screaming. Here's the guy to do some hero role. I think if they'd had a bit more, character, that's what disappears in season 3. I think when you've got Stephen and Katerina and Sarah Kingdom and Ben and Polly and Dodo, it's just like it's a revolving door of people that you can't possibly care about that much.
Yeah, I do think that's a strength of the modern era. There are things that I've liked a lot more about the classic era, including how the Daleks are portrayed. But there are things that I like more about the modern era so far, and one of them is that when companions leave now, it's a really big deal, isn't it? It's kind of as big as the Doctor leaving, and you have like the whole episode is kind of building up to it. I remember when Rose leaves. The trailer for that is like, this is the story of how I die, and I'm like, oh my goodness. So it was kind of, it's taken very seriously, whereas some of the departures have literally been like final minute, oh, we need to work out how to get rid of Dodo, don't we? She's having a lovely time in the country, and she sends her love. Goodbye.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's the thing. I know some people don't like in the new era the fact that things could be a bit, people would say, overblown, I suppose, with, it's big drawn out things, so and so's leaving. But I think there is a reality to it. I mean, you get it with Sarah Jane. That's what I think is so well done. We'll talk about this when we get to School Reunion, but that you get you understand what Sarah Jane Smith is saying in School Reunion about the fact that, like, how could she move on with her life, having sort of been, left by the Doctor in the end, and that you'd have to have a good reason to stop traveling with the Doctor, wouldn't you? Like, because you kind of think, well, what are you going to go back to in comparison? But everyone's different, I suppose. But so you kind of feel that there needs to be a bit more weight to it than just, Dodo's like, I'm just not fancy time travel anymore. I'm just having a nice sit down in this place. So, So I think that's probably what I would have done differently. I mean,
that's a good point. Yeah, it can go too far the other direction. Rose's part is very mawkish. Yeah, I know what you mean. It's it can be quite melodramatic, can't it? And but yeah, I don't know. I'm a bit of a sucker for emotion sometimes. I didn't have a problem with Tennant saying I don't want to go. I know a lot of people were like, oh, shut up, just go. But yeah, no, we'll get to that.
Yeah.
What's the next question, Paul?
So there's been a couple of questions about historical episodes. So I mean, obviously we've seen the last of them now with the Highlanders in the Troughton era. But Alex Phillips asked, did you have a favourite pure historical? So looking through, so we had Marco Polo, the Aztecs, the Reign of Terror, the Romans, which is a pure historical, isn't it? But it is a bit, because it's comedy, it feels a little bit different, I suppose. But Crusade, and then we have Myth Makers. Is that the last one? Smugglers, I suppose, is historical. Yeah.
The Massacre.
Sorry, yes, I've overlooked the Massacre there. Yeah.
The Massacre was very good, wasn't it? I did enjoy. Yeah, I think I might say the Romans actually, just because. Yeah, it is a. Yeah, I know what you mean. It's kind of a very different genre, but I suppose it's a pure historical in the sense there's no alien involvement really.
Yeah.
And I thought it was well done actually. I thought it was interesting. Yeah. What about you?
I mean, my gut instinct is definitely to say the Romans, but I also feel
we're all going for the comedy ones.
I don't, but I kind of feel as well like I shouldn't say the Romans because it is good to see Peter there. We used to work with Peter. I don't feel I should say the Romans because it is a comedy, so it doesn't even feel like it's taking history seriously. I mean, I think. Again, it goes back to looking at that list of stories. Which one would I like to watch again out of those historicals? If someone said, you've got to sit down now and watch it, I think I would watch maybe a bizarre choice, but I would watch 7 missing episodes of Marco Polo.
Wow, yeah.
That was a long time ago, obviously, that we watched that, and it's so early on in the show. But the scale of it, the scope of it, everybody just seems to be doing a great job in that story.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of good stuff. It's a story I'd love to see animated. I think that would be great.
Is that the one where we talked about soup?
Possibly. I mean, we've occasionally. There are occasions where we're watching Doctor Who and we don't talk about always what's on the screen. Occasionally,
very
that pops
occasional.
in, just occasionally. We may have talked about soup.
Yeah.
So off the back of that, I mean, someone's asked a similar question now. Alex Phillips did ask this kind of thing, but MWMCFC has said, would you like to see pure historicals in the new series? If so, what period of history would you like them to visit? And that was another question about... there was another question from Alex Phillips about, was there a time we'd have liked to have seen the Hartnell era go back to? So we can maybe cover those. Go on.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, that is something that I've been sort of yearning for in a way, because in the modern era, it's kind of like, when they go back to a historical time, it's like, oh, of course we're going to discover that there was alien involvement, or of course the Rosa Parks incident involved a space racist.
Spacist.
Spacist. And it starts to wear a little bit thin because it kind of undermines human achievements when it's always like, oh, this discovery happened because the Doctor was there. Well, that can happen in a true historical world. Oh, this discovery happened because there was actually this alien that was being involved. And, you know, I think it would be interesting if they literally just... Because they travel in space and time. So sometimes they could just travel in time and it's like, oh, we're just seeing a different time. And there are threats that are the threats of the time, but we don't have to bring Slovene into it or whatever. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think they could get away with a pure historical in modern Doctor Who, and I think the closest they've come has probably been in the Chibnall era. So I think the Rosa Parks episode that you mentioned would have been better had they just dropped that angle. And I also thought the one that was maybe, I don't know if it was the next one, the Demons of the Punjab one, where there's some aliens in that, which ultimately, about only not very far into the story, you realise they're revealed as something that aren't really a threat at all. And they just become slightly superfluous to the whole thing, and it just felt like you had to put an alien in because it's Doctor Who. And I think actually both those stories would have been better if they'd had the kind of, you know, sort of guts to just be like, we don't need that. So I think those could have got away with it. Obviously, you've got stuff like Fires of Pompeii, which is about Pompeii, but it's a historical but with a spin, and I like that as well. So I like both. But I think I'd like to see them try something. I don't know when I would like people to go to. So I mean, do you have any thoughts on if they did it again, where could they go, or where would you like to have seen them go in the Hartnell era that they didn't go?
Oh, that's a really good question. I mean, I think stuff like the ancient times is very interesting. But I'm thinking about they've done Aztecs, they've done Greeks, they've done Romans. I suppose they could do like Babylonians and stuff, couldn't they? They did ancient Egyptians, sort of. Well, that was part of so that wasn't in a pure historical. So I'm trying to think. They've already covered quite a lot. Are there any historical eras that you'd especially want to see?
I feel a bit like you when I was thinking about it. When you think of things in your head, you kind of end up thinking of things they kind of did. But yeah, I mean, the one thing that did pop into my head was I would have been interested to see the Hartnell team, maybe with Ian and Barbara, thrown into something like some setting in World War II. Yeah. But I wonder whether that would have just been too close in their memory at the time for it to be done in the 60s, given that people on set probably would have been in the war, you know. So that just struck me as something, you know, maybe they wouldn't have really considered it historical at that time.
Sure. When you were listing the pure historical stories, you missed one, Paul. The Web Planet is actually a documentary of the history of Vortis. It's a documentary.
But
well, I've just had an idea. It'd be interesting to see like an Easter Island one.
oh yeah, see
Those
this
heads like Dum Dum. You give me Gum Gum.
Gum Gum, yeah. Now that's something I do think is that's good. So I have thought about this before because you get this again. It's not really a historical, but you get like the Agatha Christie episode in season 4 with David Tennant.
Yeah.
My understanding is, I might be wrong, that the idea that Agatha Christie lost her memory and turned up at a hotel in Harrogate or wherever it was, that's a real event in the past. And they've built a story around it, and I really like that idea in Doctor Who. So it would be a kind of something that we look at now and we go, well, there's a mystery we don't understand that we don't know the answers to, but maybe the Doctor could do that. So that wouldn't be a pure historical, but I like the way you can pick up on things like that. So
that's interesting. Yeah. Like the Loki series, Marvel had the guy who went missing on the plane. They kind of explained that. That's like a famous historic event, isn't it?
Right.
Alex Phillips has said Millie Gibson said she'd like the Tadris. I'm sorry, that's just a typo, but I love stuff like that. The Tadris, time and dimension relative in space, to go to ancient Egypt again. Of course it's Dalek Master Plan, isn't it? Not the Chase. My bad.
Yes, and I would like, and in fairness, when you mentioned that, I did think to myself, we said at the time Egypt would be a good one to go back to a little bit.
You could do so much with the pyramids, couldn't you? Like, how did they build these things? Like the Doctor gave them a Toblerone or something.
Yeah. Sorry, Alex. I know they did Agatha Christie already. I was just saying that's an example of how I like when they take something with a grain of sort of historical truth and then and run with that. And John G's quite right to point out there, the Hartnell era did what we talked about there with the Mary Celeste in The Chase. That's similar to what we said, isn't it? Although that was only a very short part of the episode, that is that kind of thing. So I quite like that. A biblical story set around Moses. Yeah, that could work.
That's a great idea. And that could bring ancient Egypt into it as well.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah.
Stonehenge, I guess, the Unearthly Child was kind of prehistoric times, wasn't it? They kind of did the caveman thing.
Yeah, that's
you could do more in that era.
Yeah, it's not really
Visit Vlad the Impaler. Gosh. Yeah, I mean, we're not going to run out of history to incorporate into Doctor Who, are we?
No,
maybe in 100 years' time, they'll make like an episode where they travel back in time to COVID.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to stay at home. Stay in the TARDIS. Protect the NHS. Save lives.
I mean, this is the last question we've got, I think, that we've not really covered. Paul Hunter had asked, if you were trying to convince someone who'd never seen Doctor Who before that they'd really enjoy it, what 3 stories would you show them and why? So, I mean, presumably from the Hartnell era. It'd be like, Blink. People always say Blink, and I love Blink. I think it's great, but I'm not sure Blink is the best introduction to Doctor Who because it's a story that barely contains the Doctor. So it's not exactly standard Doctor Who in my mind. But anyway, that's an aside.
Love and Monsters. That's tricky. So 3. I mean, would we want other people to see The Chase, or is it something that we appreciate as fans, but would be slightly embarrassed for other people to see? And newcomers, maybe it's a bit much for newcomers. Maybe the Daleks would be a good one because it's the first Dalek story and it's a pretty strong story.
I don't know. I mean, the Daleks is obviously a classic. Yeah, I knew you meant First Doctor only, Paul. I was just teasing. The Daleks does. I wonder whether. I'm just wondering, modern sensibilities, whether you could sit through 7 episodes of the ordeal with the Daleks. I don't know. I think you'd mix it up, wouldn't you? Saying that, there's a lot of stuff in there that's long compared to what people will used to. I mean, the Time Meddler. I'd definitely put the Time Meddler in, no doubt.
That's a good shout.
I'd definitely go for that. and dear, this is really tricky. I see. Part of me is again like things like I think to myself, people would enjoy the Romans, but is it kind of a good example of what the show is on the whole? I don't know. Or maybe it's good to have something go, look, it can be this and it can be completely different like this, completely random and off the wall. Edge of Destruction, that's a nice two-parter.
Yeah, I would go with that.
A little bit different.
Yeah, I think that's pretty solid selection.
And I wouldn't show the whole thing, but I'd just take one episode out and show them the Feast of Stephen. I wouldn't really.
The first Christmas special. Jack Gillum says, "I have a question."
Do ask, Jack. if it comes out, great. We'll deal with it. Yeah, I don't know. So I've got two. That's two. I don't know if you. Yeah. I mean, you might have different thoughts.
I might go with the 10th planet actually, because I know it dragged in some areas, but to show the first regeneration and the Cybermen, and I think those first Cybermen are the best Cybermen I've seen ever in Doctor Who. Apart from the shot where it's looking through his legs. That's
yeah. Yeah, that was a rather strange choice. Paul Hunter has said when he asked the question, he was thinking one story per season, so you could only pick one per season. What have I picked so far? Time Meddler and what was the other one? I'm good. I'm in 2 different seasons.
Yeah.
So I've done season 1 and season 2. So from season 3, gosh, I mean, we were quite surprised by. I wonder whether I'd go for something like the War Machines.
Really?
For the slightly more contemporary feel.
Yeah.
It's a change of pace for the show.
Were quite weird, weren't they? And clunky, but it was good.
And it does have that horrific noise. They're like just in your head the whole time.
That's my fear, is that I think I'd mute it if I showed someone to it and say, "Oh no, it's just subtitles."
I mean, and I think from that season, I do remember picking Galaxy 4 as my favourite, but whether I would show that to someone, I don't know.
It's got a sort of Chumbly movement.
Chumbly. Yes. Oh, yeah, it's such a tricky one there.
You've put us in a hard position, guys.
Yeah, definitely. I thought I saw
very warm feeling. Did you mention someone thinking about how's it been adjusting to Troughton? And I think there's that sense of when you have a new Doctor, it takes some getting used to, doesn't it? And I think it's testament to Hartnell that I was actually pretty sad when we got to the end, because I was like, oh yeah, no more Hartnell. And I think Troughton is incredible, and he's immediately kind of stepped into the role. But yeah, it was quite hard hitting, the regeneration, wasn't it? It was like, wow, the first Doctor is gone. He will never be the Doctor again.
Well, I will always be. I always remember when the Doctor was me.
We all change, don't we? Like breath in a mirror.
You've got to remember all the people that used to be. Yeah, I was just looking at Jack Gillum's question that came out in the end. What was the best story in your opinion overall? That's a different question, isn't it? Because we said initially favourite story, and I said The Chase. And I think...
I don't think we can argue that The Chase is the best story.
No, exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's my favourite.
You're the best person I've ever met.
You're the best person I've ever met. Oh, dear. Gosh. I mean, I think that's a really tricky question, Jack, about what is generally the best one, because I think the thing if I could sum up the Hartnell era, is there is so much good stuff in there.
Yeah.
Like there's a few duffers, there's some which are just okay, but there's lots of stuff which is really good, and often it's Hartnell who sort of elevates it, or it's the fact that you've got Hartnell, but also just these fresh ideas all the way through.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, for me, I've come away from the Hartnell era feeling very. I've kind of got a new appreciation for it. I think I said to you as we've watched it, some of you might have picked up that I've said, you know, I've still got a lot of Doctor Who videos sitting in the loft, but I don't have a lot of black and white Doctor Who. When I was a kid, I tended to buy the colour videos because when I was younger, I wasn't as interested in the black and white because it felt old-fashioned in a way the others didn't. And so there was a lot of the Hartnell stuff. Maybe I hadn't seen some of it. I hadn't seen at all. Some of it I'd only seen once or twice and didn't have great depth to. So coming back to it now and seeing it through is giving me a massively greater appreciation for it and a greater appreciation for Hartnell. I think I would have put Hartnell quite far down my list in terms of Doctors that, you know, in terms of if I was ranking them. But he's certainly leapt up quite far for me. So I think it's just a testament to the whole era, really, as how good Hartnell was. So, yeah.
Yeah, John, geez, really glad to hear that, bro. I love the Hartnell era. Always good to hear others appreciate it. And there is that sense, isn't there? Where I think I found it quite hard hitting actually when, when Hartnell left and when all the companions that tied us to Hartnell had gone, it was like, oh, the show is now just a completely different thing. It's still Doctor Who, but it is now a new thing. And that there is that slight sense, isn't there, that the Doctor does die each time.
Yeah, and I don't want to. Maybe we'll bring this up in the season 4 review. But like, I'll mention it now. Even for me, I mean, Troughton is probably my favourite Doctor, right near the top. If not top. But I'll be honest that having spent a year watching Hartnell, when we came into the Troughton era, the first few stories I was kind of going, I was kind of pining for William Hartnell a little bit, you know, like I still it's like, oh, it doesn't really feel like he's the Doctor, you know, like it's not quite right anymore, you know. So and that's not how I feel now, but it was just interesting that I felt like that even with all my sort of baggage around the show there anyway. So
yeah, no, it's true. I think he did a huge amount for the show, and it was touching, wasn't it? In An Adventure in Space and Time, when you see him there with Matt Smith, and just that sense of the. Yeah, you were crying, weren't you? I would have been crying.
I always get a bit misty-eyed in the old Adventure in Space and Time.
Yeah, I struggle to produce tears, but I do feel emotion.
It's dead inside.
I'm a Cyberman. But I found that very emotional as well. It was like, yeah, wow, the legacy of this guy.
Well, I think, and we mentioned that, didn't we? That, I mean, and Jack asked a question then, didn't he, about, I think it was Jack, did it help us appreciate it more, having seen that, the Hartnell era? And, I mean, obviously Hartnell lived for another, I think he died in 1975 or so. So a good sort of 9 more years, but I think the thing that's so moving about Adventure in Space and Time is that what you're getting there is, admittedly in that scene, obviously they've put Matt Smith in because he's the current Doctor at the time, and there's a sense in which the first Doctor sees him, and you're supposed to kind of, you know, that even though he's leaving the show and he's becoming old and his health isn't good, his life feels like his life's at an end, really, in some ways. He's on the decline. It shows the legacy he started. Obviously in a way that isn't quite true to the history, you know, because that didn't happen. But it's just very poignant, I think. And I think, you know, that's what you can say. You can appreciate that what he has done, Hartnell, along with Verity Lambert and all the people who worked on the show in those very early days, is they created something which has stood the test of time, and for a lot of people has been a really important part of their lives. You know, like, not just, there's lots of shows which I enjoy. And I watch them again, and maybe I've seen multiple times. Lots of films I enjoy.
You wouldn't make a YouTube channel reacting to every episode, though.
Well, exactly. There's not many things like Doctor Who, which, you know, are genuinely like it's just a big part of my life. It always has been, and you know, I've probably been shaped by it in ways I don't even know. And so the Hartnell era is where it begins.
Yeah.
So I
It's
think it
ground
gives you
zero.
that.
Yeah, there was a really nice comment we got on Adventure in Space and Time. I don't know if you saw it, but someone said they met Mark Gatiss in a pub, and was sort of raving about An Adventure in Space and Time, because a lot of people are saying that's sort of one of the best things he's written. It was such a good tribute to Doctor Who, really. But yeah, apparently Mark Gatiss said he'd love for that scene when Matt Smith appears for it to be whoever's the current Doctor. So it now
Just
would
replaced.
be David Tennant, and then it would be Ncuti Gatwa, and it's just like somehow the AI replaces it to whoever's the current Doctor, which is
Someone
like
will do
it.
Someone will do it on YouTube, won't they? Yep, someone will do it.
Obviously, a completely impractical thing, but yeah, that point of when it came out, Matt Smith was the current Doctor, so it's like this sense, as you say, that yes, it's all right. This character does still live on. As a different person, so yeah,
and yes, I mean, and because I was just thinking, oh, no one's saying much; they must think we're right losers. Gordon W just said, "Doctor Who genuinely changed my life. I'm forever grateful for that." And I mean, I think I think we said that. I think that is the title of our first ever episode, our first ever video, isn't it? Doctor Who changed our lives.
Yeah.
If you've not seen it, you can go and watch it. But I mean,
and if you go further back than that, you can see me reacting to music videos, which is very
it's such a show. I mean, I think Stephen Moffat referenced it, didn't he? That I haven't got the quote to hand, but where he talked about, you know, the Doctor being this character. You know, rather than instead of giving him a gun, they gave him a screwdriver. You know, instead of making him a soldier, they made him a doctor, and all these kind of things. And
wow.
And he's the person who doesn't, you know, resort to violence. He's not a very kind of he's not your classic hero, is he? In the old school sense of, like, Ian was doing that role for a lot of things, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And then the Doctor takes on who is generally quite non-violent, and there's an element of tolerance and acceptance of different people and stuff. You know, being better than we are and stuff, and all those things. Yeah. Have probably shaped me in ways I don't know.
Yeah. The Doctor's kind of a brains character, isn't he? Not. Sorry, I think someone's in the building.
Well, it's not one of the future Shallow Proclamation reactors, is it? Who's going to appear behind you from 60 years in the future when we've regenerated.
They just take my seat and they say, Thomas sends his love. He's having a lovely time in the future.
Yes. Dear me. Anyway, we should probably wrap up anyway.
It's been an hour and 12 minutes. Gosh, guys, thanks for staying with us. Yeah.
This is what happens. It's an hour and 12 minutes when we plan not to go for very long. So
there's a lot to say, isn't there, about Hartnell? Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. But guys, thank you so much. Thank you for all of you as well who are in there sort of week in, week out. We know that sometimes we are a bit off topic and we randomly waffle onto other things, and we appreciate you bearing with us. Do stick with it though. We love engaging with you guys. This is really great. I love having you guys live here. It's really cool to see you guys. So thank you. We'd never have met you if it wasn't for Doctor Who. There you go. So
there we go.
So guys,
if
it weren't for William Hartnell, very Sir Lambert and all that lot. So guys, thanks for this. Hope you've enjoyed this review of the Hartnell era. Won't be long. Enjoy the next few episodes of season 4. We've got the End of the Faceless Ones and Evil of the Daleks, and then after that we'll get into the season 4 review, and we'll already be, very soon we'll be diving into season 5 and getting ahead. So thank you guys.
Thanks everyone. Lots of love. Enjoy the sun.
Yeah.
Shall we end it?
I don't want to go.
Do you remember the wave in the Space Museum?
Oh yeah. I was going to say, I don't want to go.
He always says
we should
that.
go. Yeah.
All right, I'm going to end it in 3, 2, 1.
Take care.
Bye.